I am Fernando Sulichin, feature and documentary filmmaker, film producer specifically.
This is Factual America. We're brought to you by Alamo Pictures, an Austin and London-based production company making documentaries about America for international audiences. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood, and today we're talking with acclaimed producer Fernando Sulichin, who has worked with film giants such as Spike Lee, David Lynch, Sean Penn, and Oliver Stone, just to name a few. Fernando has two films appearing at Cannes Film Festival this year: Flag Day, directed by and starring Sean Penn, and JFK Revisited, the latest doc from Oliver Stone. Fernando, welcome to Factual America. How are things for you? I gather you're in Moscow at the moment.
Yes, I'm in Moscow at the moment, getting ready to go to Cannes. Things are kind of hectic, but enthusiastic and happy about the new perspectives in these new upcoming days and in the post-pandemic.
Excellent. Well, we'll talk more about a lot of these things. I mean, just to remind our listeners and viewers that the two films you have at Cannes, JFK Revisited Through the Looking Glass, directed by Oliver Stone, that debuts at Cannes, which runs from July 6th to 17th. Is that also in Flag Day, which directed by and starring Sean Penn, is that also making its debut at Cannes?
Yes, nobody saw it yet, both of them.
Wow.
So welcome to the worldwide audiences in a real theater, not through Zoom, not through Boom, not through any platform.
Exactly.
We're going to sit on the dark, close our eyes, and let our heart and brain enjoy the show.
Gosh, I long for those days. That's going to be nice. I mean, as you know, we're here at Factual America, and thanks again. It's a real honor to have you come onto the show.
Privilege for me.
Well, the privilege is mine. Now, we do specialize in docs, so if we could maybe start off by talking a little bit about this latest Oliver Stone doc, which I guess you're the executive producer. What is JFK Revisited about?
Well, basically, the film, I cannot say much contractually because until the critics comes out next week, then I'm going to be free to speak.
Okay.
So basically, Oliver, Mr. Stone, did this amazing film 30 years ago.
Indeed.
And after that film, it created quite an incredible amount of controversy, and it created also desire to seek for the truth, what happened there. So after the film as well, they were open the CIA archives that they were classified. So basically, it's Oliver going through these archives and analyzing the classified information when it was declassified and linking it. It's a great complement and follow-up to the film he did 30 years ago.
So that is very interesting. I mean, is there, and I know you've not necessarily at liberty to share, and we don't want to have, we don't want any spoiler alerts or anything, but what is it? I mean, what are viewers, once they eventually get to see this? Is there anything new that we didn't already know, or is this really more about what the original film, the point it was making?
It's very new and quite juicy. So I'm encouraging the mystery and the audience to look for the film and to see it. And first to watch the original film and after to watch this. Because this is a perfect example of how fast history goes and mediatic cycles, and people don't step to analyze what the real facts are. And Oliver, which is quite a meticulous character, he goes through, he does his homework, he does his thing, and now he comes with a conclusion.
Interesting.
They are to be seen.
All right. So I guess, I mean, as you're very well aware, I mean, critics without a doubt say it's, the original film is a classic drama, and yet some will say Oliver Stone got his history wrong. That's at least what I remember of the controversy at the time. But you would say that this film is addressing that
I mean,
criticism.
no, has nothing
Not
to do with
really.
the criticism. It has to do more with it's not a correcting piece. It's a follow-up piece with more facts,
Okay.
historical, documented, very square, green and clean
Yeah.
facts.
Okay. Based on what was found by
Exactly, by the
by the
CIA and by the discoveries that they were open.
Yeah, okay. And now, have you found a home for this film yet? Do you have a distributor yet? Because I saw this interview with Spike Lee and Oliver Stone where basically he said, Cannes was going to show it, but no one else would touch it.
No, I think that you have the quality of a filmmaker like Oliver. I'm not concerned about finding a home.
Yeah.
I still believe that in the hearts of the buyers there is very smart people, which they remember the film and they remember the facts and they want to make honor to to these kind of films, not just be in a kind of a docudrama like actual fiction like Jeffrey Epstein or those kind of things that are trending now in the platforms. But this is a typical Oliver Stone, well-documented situation, as we did probably the best work I have done with Oliver, which is the untold history of the United States.
That's very interesting. I mean, I do want to talk about your collaboration with Oliver in more detail because I think, if I may refer to him as just by his first name,
Yes,
but I think,
yeah.
I think because it's quite a partnership I think you have there. But I mean, for some of us, I mean, it does seem a little odd that Oliver, I agree with you. Well, I hope you're right. I mean, I'm sure you're right that eventually this will get seen, and certainly in the U.S. But is there? What do you think? Is that saying anything about the? I think maybe you've alluded to it. I mean, what is that saying maybe about the film industry at the moment in terms of having that challenge of at least not finding a buyer for it yet?
I think that there is room for everyone.
Yeah.
Like if you go to a supermarket, you have an aisle of organic food.
Yes.
You have an aisle of diabetic food.
Right.
So now these big platforms are like big supermarkets where you can find pretty much everything. The only thing is for you to make people aware of these kind of things and not just watching, I mean, there had been some great documentaries lately and some great documentary series lately.
Yeah.
Like the Michael Jordan, even like entertaining ones like Formula One or the ones from Manchester City or All and Nothing, you understand? So the only thing is that this is another level of filmmaker, another level of history, another level of facts. We're not looking for the drama. We're looking to set the story straight.
Yeah. And well, I think that takes, as I said, you have this. I mean, first of all, what is it like working with Oliver Stone? I mean, you have this long time collaboration with him, certainly on documentaries, which probably I would argue don't get the attention that they deserve, to be honest.
Well, I think that, thank God, we're making films that stand with history. It's like we're making gourmet situations in a moment that people are digesting just fast food.
Yeah.
So it's like, so we're tailor-made and things stand by itself and they don't age. Like I've been watching at past documentaries lately, like not a failed documentary, but like a documentary that we did called Persona Non Grata about the conflict in the Middle East. I saw it a little while ago and it's fascinating. So about the experience of working with someone like Oliver, it's challenging because the level of exigence, creative exigence and excellence of someone like him is all or nothing. So we have to be on the ball. We cannot be lazy. we need to know about the subject. We need to be truly, he inspire you to be at your best. So, and he made me grow as a person and as a filmmaker. So that's beauty. That's very nice. It's not someone that is just a job.
Yeah.
It's someone that from his brain, it came 10 masterpieces in film. From the idea of Tony Montana, to Platoon, to imagine, to write Midnight Express, that's from his brain.
Yeah.
And imagine to collaborate, to have the chance and the lucky to collaborate with someone in his good days and in his bad days. So for me, that I choose film producing and documentary producing as a career is, it's like I hit the creative jackpot.
Exactly. I mean, as you mentioned, in what ways has he made you grow as a person and a filmmaker, would you say?
First, he's a reference. He's a reference for excellency. He's not someone that is doing that. He's not doing this for money. He's doing this because he's a seeker of the truth.
Yeah.
So, in some films, he takes very little, and he pushes for the best distribution, or sometimes with the underdog, or sometimes things like that. But he's not doing this for the money. He's doing this because he has a legacy, and that you can see on his catalog.
Yeah.
So to be able to be the developer of an architect like him, it's amazing.
And if you don't mind, let me zero in on one documentary in particular, which I know you produced with him, and you're there in Moscow, so I might as well ask about it. The Putin interviews. I mean, how did those come about, and maybe you can use that as a way of illustrating about how he approaches and you approach these subjects, because I think that's one that I think, like a lot of Oliver Stone things, there's a initial sort of media reaction, and then there's if people actually sit down and watch and don't just buy what others are telling them, there's a very different. You
just say the problem.
Yeah,
is that we're living in a moment of just opinionated people, and not people that they create proposals or give answers. So everybody's opinionated without seeing the product. So that's why, and especially in journalism, because in journalism you have the interpretation of President Putin or whoever through the eyes of someone sitting in a desk in an obscure newspaper giving his opinion. But we go and we talk to the fellow, whoever is the subject, in this case, President Putin, and we get to listen to his voice, we get to ask him the questions, we get to see what he has to say, and we get to demystify some things that the general media trying to install out of laziness.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating because we discover someone in general, could be with him, could be with others, like we did something with Fidel Castro, that we did trip with Fidel Castro, that it's really fascinating, you understand? Like we get to ask the questions to these persons that are like, comparing in a parallel way. Imagine when Mick Jagger wrote Satisfaction, if you're next to him, or, I don't know if he wrote it, but I think that maybe he did.
Yes.
How does it feel to be a Rolling Stone? And you're living that experience of being a Rolling Stone. So it's a human experience, besides of learning from firsthand what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, or any historical figure, or any,
It happened the same with Nelson Mandela. I was petrified, I met him a few times. I was petrified. Like, what would I ask Mandela?
Yeah.
What would I talk about with Mandela? I had lunches alone with Mandela for 4 hours. And I say, what do I have in common? What do I have to share? What can I ask him?
Yeah.
How was jail? Like what it's
Yeah.
ridiculous, but
Yeah.
it's intimate. But you have him in front, so you're not opinionating. You're living the experience.
I
My
mean,
job is to facilitate that.
so as you've already made reference to, and I mean, you certainly have. I mean, one of your many skills, I would say, is this knack for gaining access, certainly with powerful or well-known people like Mandela, Castro, Putin, the big names, and even south of the border, Chavez, Morales, Lula, Kirchner. I mean, what is the key to that? I mean, these people could easily just say no, but they
First,
say yes.
Hollywood seduces.
Yeah.
Oliver Stone has a big aura of integrity. People are curious about Hollywood as much as we're curious about world politics.
Yeah.
So it becomes a dialogue, and that you can see the screen, which is quite interesting because it's between two people like Castro and Oliver. It was quite a chemistry because they were showing things to each other like two children, despite who Castro is or what he did wrong or what he did right.
Yeah.
It's a human experience. Same with President Putin, or with Jim Jarmusch. I did a documentary with Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
And I never bought a record of Iggy Pop in my life. I knew the character, but I never knew his music. So I got to learn these things. So I got to experience these things. So for me, it was a learning experience to be exposed to these people, to get access and to get a lot of access. Access, it means to ask him about his personal life, things that I will be curious about or Oliver will be curious about. It's not about judgment, it's about discovering.
I mean, that's a very interesting point. I mean, do you sit there? What if I was sitting at home and I was going to stream this or I was going to watch it on TV? What would the viewer want to know from this subject? And is that how you think about the questions to ask? Or
not really? It's
Yeah.
what we want to know. We incorporate the viewer in a little bit because there is some myth about the persons that we need to clarify.
Right.
In the case of President Putin, we clarified certain questions about that viewers want to know about homosexuality or in Russia or nuclear weapons or things like this. But bottom line is Oliver and his point of view on history. These are giants. These are people that they stay on.
Yeah. What I find interesting about going back to Putin, I mean, he could have at any time he could have shut down the filming. He could have said, "I've had enough." But this was 20 hours over a couple years that you had with him. Yeah, 36. I mean, that's amazing because it's not like, I mean, forget what the media how they reacted or whatever. If you really, you watch it, or if you read the what I would say the good the good reviews say is that, I mean, like you said, you do your homework. You don't. It's not like you don't ask him tough questions.
Of course, we ask the tough question. The problem is that people, they don't want to listen to these answers.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that you have is that people want to demonize things according to the fashion of the moment. Oh, this one had the elections. Oh, the other one is that. Oh, the other one is that. So they prefer to have their point of view and to be right than just to open their point of view and understand that maybe we're talking about other cultures that is not Anglo-Saxon. Maybe we're talking about other different point of views. Maybe we're talking about things, young democracies, or whatever you want to call them, but they're not based on super parties, you understand, the super, the big blocs, situations like you have in the United States, which is different than in Russia or in other things,
Yeah.
The world is multicultural, we cannot just watch it through the eyes of one culture.
Or even, as you know, in the U.S., I mean, or one political lens, which,
Yes,
and that's left and right, or however you want to describe it. Everyone's seeing things through a
I'm
particular
quite
lens.
bored about that.
It is extremely boring. I
Yes,
don't
I
even
want
need
to
to,
be
I mean,
post that,
yeah,
post pandemic, because there is a lot of double standard and hypocrisy on that.
yeah. I mean, to the point that, I mean, as someone who's a consumer for various reasons of that media, I find myself, I don't even really need to check. I know exactly what one outlet's going to say, and I know what exactly the other person's going to say.
Yes, and they're going
You
to
know,
demonize, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do that. But with that, it's like the world is one.
yeah,
We have a big house. Imagine like if you're in your house and you're just insulting your mother-in-law all the time. You're not going to have a happy household. So we need, and especially now, we have a big challenge, which is global warming.
yeah,
So the planet is going to melt unless we all together have a solution and put our political differences aside. Bye bye,
yeah,
goodbye.
yeah.
No Greta, no nobody, no Al Gore, no,
No,
nothing is going to save you.
yeah, yeah.
And we have many signs about that.
I think that's odd to say at a good place, but I think that's a good place to stop. We're going to give our listeners a bit of a break and a chance for a sponsor to say something, but we'll be right back with Fernando Sulichin, the acclaimed producer of many films, many docs, many narratives as well. But certainly JFK Revisited Through the Looking Glass is one of the more recent ones that's debuting at Cannes. Art and entertainment inspire each of us in different ways. But have you ever wondered what inspires the people who create our cultural touchstones? On the Spark Parade podcast, your host Adam Unz geeks out with artists and entertainers about their cultural spark of inspiration. Everything from Shakespeare to South Park. You'll hear from artists like Connor Oberst on Northern Exposure, Roisin Murphy on Terence Conran's The House Book, and Adrian Young on Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. The Spark Parade, where artists reveal their cultural inspirations to spark the inspiration in you. Find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You're listening to Factual America. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Alamo Pictures to keep up to date with new releases or upcoming shows. Check out the show notes to learn more about the program, our guests, and the team behind the production. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with acclaimed producer Fernando Sulichin. His two films debuting at Cannes in July, JFK Revisited Through the Looking Glass, which we've already had a chance to discuss. We've also got a narrative, Flag Day, directed and starring Sean Penn, also screening at Cannes in July. We've been talking about, certainly you're focusing on your documentaries and work with Oliver Stone, but you've worked with a lot of giants on certainly the feature film narrative side. Spike Lee, as we've already discussed, about Malcolm X, Sean Penn, David Lynch. I do want to get to your point, back to your point about the world, the environment, and how we all need to cooperate. But just briefly, if you may indulge me, I mean, in terms of this working with these directors, I mean, what connects them? What common trait or theme makes them great filmmakers, besides having you as a producer?
I think that they're all quite unstoppable, extremely free on their mind, like open-minded, and they're not afraid of failing. They're like Don Quixote. They all have a mission, these people, and the mission is not to buy a bigger house.
Right.
So in the terms of Oliver Stone, he's a seeker of the truth. He's a historian, and he wants to set the record straight. about the double standard and to make people think about the other possibilities. He has some subjects like the empire, like the greediness, could be through Wall Street, could be
Right,
through,
exactly.
but he's a humanist, and then someone like Sean Penn is a poet, a painter, an artist, who really is doing like a Mother Teresa job in terms of his humanitarian efforts.
Yeah.
This guy is a true hero, 100% hero. There is an earthquake, he goes and he saves life with his bare hands. There is a hurricane, he goes and rescue people in a boat.
Yeah.
You name it, he's there.
Yeah.
Someone like Spike Lee, 40 years of empowering Black people for their own pride, and create a generation of filmmakers that he was the pioneer.
Yeah.
And he fight left and right. David Lynch, through his foundation, first one of the most creative people in the history of film, from Elephant Man to Blue Velvet to and through his foundation, he's helping so many people through meditation in post-traumatic disease, children. These are remarkable human beings. So they're not there just to get a bigger house, or as I said before, or they're there to make a difference. So I'm glad that by chance or by coincidence, or by talent, they are helping them to do that.
I mean, I guess it may sound odd to say, but I guess there's a humility there, isn't there?
Humility in what sense?
In the sense of, well, I mean, they're, or maybe, I guess they're less I think so many, even people who aren't successful, can be very extremely self-indulgent or self-focused on self. And if you're less...
They're not there in a patrimonial situation. They're there because, like I'm giving you an example. We're making a new documentary with Oliver about climate change and nuclear energy.
Yeah.
Called A Bright Future, which is what he's working on now. Full time, non-stop, unstoppable.
Yeah.
The commitment for him for something like this is, again, amazing. Someone like him, he could have retired, or he could have enjoying his success in films, or making another film, or taking jobs like Fast and Furious 10 or things like this. But
I would actually like to see that in an odd way.
Yeah, like he really wants to make what he wants to make.
Yeah. And that since we're talking about it, let's talk about this, because this is what you're working on now. Do you have an idea of when this will be released, and what was the name of the film again?
It's called A Bright Future.
A Bright Future. So
hopefully we're going to be finished around Sundance.
Okay.
Around Sundance, we're almost there, but it's basically we're living in this. The double standard doesn't apply only to history; it applies to climate change as well. People are talking about, you don't need to be ultra orthodox or vegan, to understand that this is going to affect us all. The amount of oils that are going. So, and what Oliver is proposing is, and what he's exploring is, first to make a check about what is the situation now, what are the solutions, and why are people not using other solutions. He's proposing other solutions, which includes nuclear energy, which is sometimes bad mouth, but he's explaining why this is one of the fastest and only solutions for us not to have a planet meltdown.
Because I think
Fascinated. It's fascinating. You know, the
no.
more I learn, the more.
Well, I think it sounds very fascinating, and I think it's if it's in true Oliver Stone fashion, he's going to cut through a lot of the noise that surrounds this debate. As you know, as you're aware, there's loads of these films that have come out of various that have either made a splash or not about the environment. But I mean, we've even had segments where we've talked about, some of them probably scare people, to be honest, into a sense of almost not acting, if you will, or don't offer solutions, or offer solutions that aren't realistic.
Yes.
So is that what you see? Is this is the way this is how your film is going to be different? It is.
Our film is very practical. It's not
Yeah.
just announcing. This is what needs to be done. It's like a doctor giving you
Yeah.
a recipe for something. This is what needs to be done. And the doctor, in this case, are ultra specialists in the field, explaining exactly what needs to be done for people to start digesting some other solutions that are not just the conventional alternative energies.
Yeah. And I mean,
But with wind and with solar, it's not enough.
well, yeah, indeed. And in order to, so basically, I guess, it sounds like you've kind of worked backwards. This is the environment. If nothing's done, this is what we will face. And in
Yes.
order to get
This
something
is the
done
next
in
pandemic.
time,
And
Yeah.
there is a big crisis because people in Europe or in America, they have the money to finance changes of infrastructure, but in the rest of the world, they don't. And you need to make new grids, new electricity things. How are you going to replace? How are you going to stop a kid from having a phone that he wants to get whatever social media and to relate?
Yeah.
And how would you deprive him from him having electricity? And how are you going to generate that electricity without creating a global catastrophe? So that's what the film is about. Because you cannot stop, we cannot go Greta style, which is fantastic, but it's hardcore. We need to see solutions for people to keep using electricity, but for us to generate it in a way that we don't drown or get hurricanes or change the climate or have the bees not having pollen anymore, or have an ultra generation of mosquitoes because of the species are mutating or things like this.
Yeah. And so it's in the end, a hopeful film strikes me.
A very hopeful film with a hopeful situation, because solutions are easier than people think. But fashion and media are making that environment is the flavor of the month, but then it's going to pass into something else. Like sometimes in Oscars you see the flavor of the month, that you have we care about the American Indians, then next year we care about the blacks, then next year we care about this, and then we change. So environment is the problem of today, but we don't want it to be a fashion. We want it to be something that we all collaborate into solutions which are doable.
Well, indeed, and I think the environment would have been called something different, but the environment's been the fashion before, and the problem with fashions is that then sometimes nothing happens, right?
Exactly. It's just a fashion. It fades into the next collection.
Yeah. And then, but for the sake of future generations, we've got to act
we need to do
now.
it. If not, forget it. I have a son.
Yeah.
If I want him to enjoy what I work on, we better change. So this is mostly for our next generations that we did this documentary.
Yeah, I have to admit, personally, I used to say, because I have children and some teenagers, and I would say, well, I think your generation's going to save the planet. And now I'm realizing that we can't wait for my teenagers
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. Well, I that sounds like a great film, and I think I think it's going to surprise a lot of people that Oliver Stone's doing an environmental film.
Surprised me when he came with this. It surprised me that I'm working on this film for 2 years, all over the world. That I'm in Moscow.
Yeah. In Moscow's in Russia is one of the places. Is there a reason
It's one of
particular?
the places that we filmed.
Yeah.
We filmed in France. We filmed in America.
Okay. Okay. So, well, I think that's. I mean, that is. I think that's a very exciting, and definitely look forward to seeing that. And we're not done yet, but certainly if when that film comes out, we'd love to have you back on if we
With
haven't
pleasure. And I
scheduled.
think that Oliver should be interviewed by you.
Would love to have Oliver on sometime. I
I'm going
think
to
that would.
mention to him next week when I see him in Cannes.
I would please do, and that would be an honor. I've seen some interviews with him recently. I think he's very magnanimous with his time, and it would certainly be an honor. So I definitely appreciate that. I mean, kind of like Oliver, you both have done dramatic features and also documentaries. Do you have a preference? And increasingly, can we even
To
separate the
be
two?
honest, to
Yeah,
be honest, I really like documentary.
yeah,
I love feature, but I love to watch feature because to make a great feature is very, very difficult. It's like to create outstanding music.
yeah,
Only a few can do it.
yeah,
So not every song you write, it's outstanding.
yeah,
So sometimes we hit. I'm quite proud of the film, some of the films I made,
yeah,
or I collaborate.
yeah.
But it's quite difficult. It's quite challenging.
But I guess I mean, there's no longer, because I think you, Oliver Stone, and if some others have shown this. There used to be this sort of either you did documentaries or you did feature, but I think you've shown. I mean, a good filmmaker is a good filmmaker,
You need to
and
express yourself.
yeah,
So also, for example, the films that Oliver makes, which are quite of big stories, you need quite a budget, and you don't want to compromise. So until you don't get the
right,
conditions necessary for you to express your ideas or your point of view or a script that you really like, why not expressing yourself in another media that, and we have fun, it's a great ride that we had for the last 15, 20 years, doing all these interviews, all these documentaries, or, again, like if I show my son and to to your kids,
yeah.
the untold history of America, I have good film karma for the next 50 years. So I'm allowed to make bad films.
That Fast and Furious 10 one you were
I
talking
can
about.
make anything bad, and I will be in the film purgatory. I go direct to heaven.
And I mean, so you must be in a position to say no to a lot of projects these days,
Yes, I do.
unless Oliver,
I
of
do.
course, mentions.
I
But
do say no to a lot of things.
yeah. I mean, what
But not,
unifies? Go ahead.
but I say no out of one question. Like I have an easy yes, but it's so exhausting to make a film, physically consuming to make a film, that now I need to take care of my energy.
Right.
So it's only because of that. If not, I will do 10, 20 films a year.
Yeah.
I did 4 in the past, 4 a year in the past, when I was in my 30s.
Yeah. I don't
Now
know.
I prefer to go to the gym in the morning, or
Exactly.
to watch a bad series on internet.
Exactly. But is there a theme that I mean, whether it's narrative, whether it's whether it's feature or doc, is there a theme that sort of unifies the projects that you will say yes to?
It depends of the moment in time and history. I have done many films ego-based because I thought, and I had the illusion that this is going to change my life forever.
Right.
then 2 years later, a lot of effort, I lost a lot of money, and it changed my life for the worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Film, it's a very illusionary medium. Sometimes you feel you're a better person because you're a filmmaker. Not anymore. So people they're in the movie industry, they believe that they have superpowers.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, and people look at you like, oh, you're like, I was in Argentina last week.
Yeah.
Oh, you're in Hollywood. You're,
Yeah.
it's like you're better, and we're all the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, have you ever been tempted to direct? Because you've always been a producer.
I have been tempting to direct. I'm planning to direct.
Okay.
When I get a little bit more of energy, especially if I listen by all these monsters that I watch, take by take, I edit next to them, or or get inspired, by osmosis. I may have do a good film, just by magnetic illumination. But let's see what it come out. Let's see what it comes out. I'm curious to see what it manifests from me. I don't know. I certainly know the people that could make me not, the crew that could make me not embarrass myself.
Exactly. So what is the key to being I mean, we have a lot of directors come on, obviously they often have a producer credit, but we don't often get people who are, I wouldn't say exclusively producers, but that has been certainly your bread and butter. What makes a good producer? What has been the key to helping you work with people like, or making sure you surrounded yourself with people like Oliver Stone and Spike Lee and others?
You need to, even if you disagree, first you need to have a very strong, your point of view. It needs to come from your heart. So when you're against something, or when you get bored in your own film, you need to fight it. But not because of the audience, it's because you fall asleep in your own film.
Right.
It could happen, It happened.
Yeah.
Or if you see the editing is a disaster, you need to be brutal and say, it's not because you're against the director or you know better than the director, it's because sometimes it happens, It's like, why not? So your point of view is as valid as whatever. And second, you need to support them to go to the best of their abilities without thinking about if the distributor is going to like it. Or the moment that you embark yourself, that you with a director like this, level or this caliber, or anyone that you understand that has this track record, you know that you're making a film by them. A film by them could be a masterpiece or could be a misfit.
Yeah.
So if it's a misfit, you choose this director or you choose to spend your time with this director, so you need to take it. That you could have done that better, or that he could have done that better, or she, let's put it in the modern way.
Yeah, certainly.
We don't know, but you need to get to the best of their abilities. You need to potentiate themselves to the maximum. It's not that you need to get your version of the film. You need to get the best version of the film they can. And that's my job.
Yeah.
Of course, I have a lot of help. I hide myself between below me or next to me.
Yeah.
There is a lot of unbelievable people that do the day-to-day, extremely academic, extremely knowledgeable. So I have the tools to contribute with this. I have an amazing team.
Yeah. And I think that's a very good point, and that's true of any profession you're in. If you are surrounding yourself with people who are professionals and dedicated to their work and their jobs and things like that, it just makes things so much better, doesn't it?
And yes, and the beauty is that sometimes with these people, I don't need to even talk to them. They know where we're going.
Yeah.
It's a synergy that we know where we're going. The most important is that we're making these films for us and for the public, not for the historical moment of now. Yeah. It's not an apology, because it's not an apologetic thing. Like, they try to censor us many times. networks. They censored one film. Comandante was censored by HBO.
Is that right?
Of course.
Yeah.
It was quite a funny experience of me that I come from a country that they used to censor.
Yeah.
Having been censored in the US, that was like the Congress Medal of filmmaking.
Exactly. Interesting. I mean, I think it almost. I mean, it's maybe a crude analogy, but almost you were making reference to even the. So I think sports docs and Jordan. I mean, it's almost like you hear great football players, soccer players, or basketball players all say they can't. They have a love of the game. They love what they do, and they can't even believe they're getting paid to do it. And I guess it must be kind of similar, as you say. You're making these films. You're making these incredible films that stand the test of time, and then, wow, at the end of the day, you make a decent living out of it.
Yes, and especially when sometimes, like for example, we had the coincidence of the film of interviews with Putin, like the Putin interviews.
Yeah,
that was a big commercial success. So, we found a great audience. So hopefully we keep making those, and we keep opening the minds of Americans, of English, of anyone, that we can.
Humanity.
Yeah, we try. At least we try,
Yeah, exactly. We'll keep trying. I really appreciate it. I mean, you've already mentioned A Bright Future, the film you're doing with Oliver Stone next. What is next for you beyond, and we talked a little about maybe doing some directing, but is there, I know you also have a lot of philanthropic activities. Is there, what are you working on next, or can you even think that far?
At the moment, I'm more focused on the philanthropy than in the films, because we're in a pandemic, so I need to support different foundations which I'm member and board member, or to take the fish out of the water, like getting vaccines to countries that they don't have access to vaccines.
Indeed.
And vaccinating, and then contributed with David Lynch Foundation in meditation to post-trauma veterans, things like this, which are important because we're so lucky and we're so privileged that we need to remember that there is a lot of people that they don't have this privilege, and we're not there to behave like pigs. We need to share.
Yeah, and I think you raise a very good point. I mean, the whole pandemic vaccination. I mean, we're setting ourselves up for this two-speed recovery. In fact, one part of the world's not even going to recover because they're not even getting vaccinated, and we're so focused on it in the West. And but there's we are part of one world, and we can be vaccinated, but if the other half isn't, that's just going to, we're all in this together.
If you have a toe that hurts, your body is hurting. So we're all one, and we need to remember that. So don't be just liver center, or we need to see it in a holistic point of view.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're coming to the end of our time, unfortunately. But Fernando, it's been great having you on.
It's been a fast hour, eh?
And I'm glad you agree. Yes, it has been a fast hour. I've got a little timer over here, and I can't believe how long it's been. But we really enjoyed having you on. Best of luck at Cannes. I have a feeling we're going to be hearing.
I hope I come back with the same weight as I went in, because the croissants in France are quite delicious.
Yeah, and not just the croissants. I think. I think you'll. Well, that's. I'm sure that's going to be a great festival. Is that the first festival you've been to in person in a while?
No, it's the 28th Cannes Film Festival.
Well, the 28th Cannes, but the first festival for you since the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah.
The first, so I'm looking forward to.
Well, 28th at Cannes. Yeah, I know. I mean, as much as Zoom is great, you and I get to have this chat. It doesn't really replace being face to face
Yeah.
with people. But 28 times at Cannes, you must know
Yeah,
the
I
place like
was
the back of your
very,
hand.
very, very young. I
Yeah.
started my career very young. I was associate producer of Malcolm X when I was 25. So
How did you get? I mean, if I may ask, because I know
yes,
you've relayed this story a few times. A lot of people ask about it, and you got a film crew into Mecca and places like that. But how did you score that amount? 25, I think, fresh out of film school. How did you get onto Malcolm X?
pure unconsciousness. It was divine destiny. Let's put it that way. And hard work, of course.
Yeah, yeah,
I was, instead of lost, at that age, I was found. And I was quite unstoppable. So I was decided to, I didn't want to go back to Argentina and be, like have a bourgeois life and a traditional suburban living. I wanted to make something of myself. I didn't know what.
yeah.
So I met Spike Lee, we connected, and he took me on.
And I will ask one more question. I've seen reference to the fact that you made, and I think in a different interview, but said that was a very different time, the '80s and the '90s, weren't they? You talk about a
The films in the
crazy,
80s and the 90s.
yeah, or just that it was a different. The industry was so different.
Yeah, the
Uh,
industry was, now it's all quotas and ethics committee. It's
yeah,
kind of a new McCarthyism. There were wild peoples that they were coming from the 70s and the 80s that imagine a hairdresser became the president of Columbia Pictures.
yeah, yeah,
And he created movies like Rain Man, Batman,
yeah,
Midnight Express, John Peters, which is alive.
yeah,
Or someone like Mario Casar, which was a Lebanese salesman that created Rambo, Basic Instincts, Terminator. Those guys, they were wild thinking. They were amazing, and they are amazing, and they're alive, and they're cool.
yeah, yeah,
So they were not constrained by politically correctness, this or this or that. And those films, they stand by its time. They're huge references of Scorsese at that time when he made those films. He was out of his brain.
yeah, yeah.
In a good way, the creative energy of those people, they were not the flavor of the mouth. They were enjoying life.
I
Now
mean, if you
we're a
don't,
little bit too
yeah.
much into ego limitation, how much you have, and those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I won't name names, but we've had people on who've talked about working with one of the big streaming services or whatever platforms, and they felt like the main people they weren't liaising with filmmakers. It was mostly marketeers and things like that. I mean, I think I understand some of that why it's
That's
done, but
why I'm
yeah.
not taking chances. I'm only working with people which I'm going to have a good time with.
I think that's the best piece of advice for anyone, no matter what field you're
Because
in.
bottom line, that translates into the film.
Yeah, yeah,
Like groups of people, even now, like the Jude Apatow, like all this Pineapple Express, it's a group of people having a good time that they know each other.
yeah.
So those guys that I'm making reference in the 80s or the 90s, you understand all that? Terminator or Total Recall,
Oh
they're
God.
insane films.
Yeah, yeah,
Great. You
yeah.
love those films.
It's
Like
true.
you like JFK, you like
And
JFK was done by an Israeli, you know, dealer of whatever, you understand, Arnold Milchan, who created Pretty Woman, now is quite dull. People are afraid of their own shadow. It's like, if you curse in a Zoom, in a streamer, you say the word fuck, they fire you.
okay, I won't say it because I might get fired. No, I'm just
No.
joking. But I know.
But
I
understand, it's not, come on, you understand?
Yeah.
This is creative industry. This is not just,
Well, it's as if we've forgotten what it means to be human.
yeah, yes, of course we have
Yeah.
differences, and we,
Yeah.
it's not like, I respect race, diversity, gender,
Yeah.
trans, whatever.
Yeah.
But let's make great films. That's what we're about, not just doing a quota.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much. Would
My
love to have
pleasure.
you on again, and good luck. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
And we'll talk soon.
Okay, and dos vidania.
Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right, bye. See ya.
Bye.
So I just want to give a big thank you again to Fernando Sulichin, the executive producer of JFK Revisited, Through the Looking Glass, premieres at Cannes Film Festival in July. Also premiering is Flag Day, which is directed by and starring Sean Penn, which we didn't even really get a chance to discuss, but be on the lookout for that too. Big shout out to Sam and Joe at Intersound Audio in Escrick, North Yorkshire, England. Big thanks to Nevena Paunovic, our podcast manager at Alamo Pictures, who ensures we continue getting such great guests like Fernando onto the show. And finally, a big thanks to our listeners. As always, we love to hear from you, so please keep sending us feedback and episode ideas, whether it is on YouTube, social media, or directly by email. And please remember to like us and share us with your friends and family wherever you happen to listen or watch podcasts. This is Factual America, signing off. You've been listening to Factual America. This podcast is produced by Alamo Pictures, specializing in documentaries, television, and shorts about the USA for international audiences. Head on down to the show notes for more information about today's episode, our guests, and the team behind the podcast. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Alamo Pictures. Be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing our films, and to connect with our team. Our homepage is alamopictures.co.uk.